Well, one of the things that we didn't do yet, and I'm not sure, maybe this is what you can guide us on, is to identify somehow or organize the placement of the dots, how far on the left and how far on the right.
Okay, we can do that. So let's look at the first one is pay consultants. You know, 4 phases: Genesis, custom built, product, and commodity. So if you think about paying consultants, how widely spread is that activity amongst companies which pay consultants in some way?
Oh, well, all of them.
All of them.
It's a commodity,
exactly.
Right? So,
it's a commodity, so you move it to the right.
Okay, who wants to move it to the right? I'll do it. Yeah, I think we don't have them grouped, so I have to do that. And move it over to the right. We'll take care of the lines later, right?
Yeah, later. So now I will ask you a slightly different exercise, a different question, because you move it to the right. Pay consultants is ubiquitous. Everyone is using it. But is everyone doing it in the same way?
Well, there's one little fly in the ointment here, because we on purpose left out a key differentiator where we pay people by the slice in the event model. So this, I think I talked to you in person, where we have these slices as fixed costs, but we're ignoring it for now because our solution is actually stuck at just time billing. So we're not going to do that. So I will say that our payments are nothing special.
Nothing special. If they are, so
nothing special.
That's the trick.
I would say that basically some people pay by time and some people pay by piecework, as they call it, and by the slice is piecework. So that's a commodity. That's something to understand.
Rick, we said we're going to ignore that for just this exercise. Right? We're going to add that later. We're going to do it before then, because we could. I mean, we have only a bit more than an hour, so we're going to keep it simple.
But just to understand principle, Chris, just to understand principle. If you're saying there's like a specifics, so it means this point for pay consultant is will be shifting or sliding to the left, right? So, for example, if you are saying pay by slices, so it means it's more driving to the left.
So, so it's not really about the way or the basis for which is used for payment. It's rather like you have a database of consultants, and it's all about how do you contract the work, what terms do you put into the contracting agreements, and how the actual payment goes to the consultant. Probably I have overcomplicated this component, but then we should have a discussion about what do we actually mean by paying consultants, right? Is it a money transfer, or is it sending money to those consultants, or is there any sort of work that needs to be approved before the payment is sent?
Well, right? there is that. So client payment status, and I believe we have time validation deep here.
Right. That's good. So the pay consultants, we can imagine that it's just basically a money transfer, right?
Yeah. So we have the other aspect addressed in another point.
Oh, okay. So if it's a money transfer, it is probably utility, and I agree with that. If you had options like it can be money transfer, you can set it in Bitcoin, or you have a very specific agreement or a private cryptocurrency which you are using to send value to your consultants, and it would be probably on the left. But right now it's perfectly fine being in the commodity utility space. So what you are describing, or what the map represents, in the best case, it's the as-is system. And the trick here is that it doesn't have to be a computer system, because most probably companies work in this way, regardless of whether they have a software that helps them.
That's right.
Right? So, okay, but here is another point, I think. You can model the systems or the version of the future that you are aiming at. But of course, the farther is the future from you, the more things you have to create, the more mistakes you will make on the map.
Yes.
So let's take another component, which is the predict cash flow?
I think
Is it
that's,
ubiquitous?
I don't think it is. I mean, maybe that's a discussion. And I would say that most business owners, as CFO, that would be a top concern, to make sure that they're not paying out to consultants for work they haven't, collected on. Now, obviously, that has to be tempered by whether the clients that they're billing are reputable ones, and that the likelihood of not getting paid is very low, because it's a large established business. If there's some problems with getting money out of them, there's legal recourse and, next to zero chance of them being out of business, so that you can always collect if you actually did the work. So the predicting cash flow becomes more important is when you're dealing with a number of startups, and when you have to ask yourself questions such as, did I take a deposit for at the start of this project? Am I covered? Is the client dependent on us? If we don't give the IP because they didn't pay, that's fine. That's a leverage against money owed, even though I paid the consultant. Or am I in the situation where I didn't take a deposit, they have access to the repository, we paid our consultants, but they're not paying us, which is the worst of the situation. So predicting cash flow is part of that kind of question. It can be some minutia in there about, well, these have a different payment cycle. This large client pays 30 days only after they review the bill, but they review their bills at the end of the month. So you really could have a potential 2-month delay. So whether that's something that we can roll with our cash flow because it's dependent, or is this something that's been, maybe it's a COVID thing, people are short on cash and they're not paying because they don't have the money to spend right now, but they promised they will. A big gray area. But the predictive cash flow gives you the ability to at least make that decision. And for this purpose, we said that we explicitly, and because it is the laws of British Columbia and Canada, that as consultants and contractors work, you legally cannot pay until you get the money, because if you do pay without getting the money first, then you're not subcontracting the work, you're actually an employer, and now you're on the hook for paying a bunch of taxes, etc. So it's a legal situation in my case, where I specifically cannot pay someone if they are Canadian citizens, unless I received that money for them to be considered a contractor. And if I fail to do that, then I can stand to lose a lot of back taxes. And of course, I don't have that calculated in my profits, and therefore it'll erase, or even put me in debt for doing that mistake. So it's quite important for me.
So here is how I see it. Predicting a cash flow sounds like something custom built, because from what you have described, you are taking into the account many different factors, but you haven't got this codified or repeatable. It's basically human judgment almost in every case. And this is probably the case all over the industry.
Yes.
Right? So I consider this to be custom built because it varies so much from instance to instance, and I can imagine two different persons taking different decisions in the same situations based on their risk appetite, or maybe because they feel like it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so
it belongs in the custom built section.
But it has a big potential towards being moved to the product or commodity utility space.
That's correct. So
you
we can put
imagine
a red arrow there, right, for showing the potential. So I'm going to just move this red arrow here.
Yeah, because you can imagine stuff like scoring system for customers. Why not? Or
yeah, of course. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, you could have, and I think financial institutions do for loans. They do that kind of thing. They say, how long has your business been in operation? How are the balance sheets? They have it's just like credit rating, right? Similar thing as credit rating. So I'll put that in, but I don't want to touch this. So I'm gonna try and move this. There's too many things on this board now.
So we can look at bill clients next. Maybe we'll move it.
Right. Okay.
So how would you position billing clients?
It's also a commodity, I think, because everyone, especially the clients, they are expecting a very standard API, and they do not foresee working with one company to be different than working with another. However, since we do, this is for later, but right now we're just subcontractors where we're just someone that can find a team to do the work and the client can't, so they come to us. However, in the other system we're going to talk about with the slices, the second Wardley map, there is going to be a differentiator because our bills to the client will be custom because they are like a shopping list. They have each feature with a standard price next to it. That's how they pay, which is not the way that most software places operate. So that will be custom, and hopefully it'll become a product at some point later. But for this exercise, I want to clarify that we're just taking care of the baseline, which is time and materials billing, which is any consultancy, which I think would belong then further on the right, even more so than paying consultants. I think we have even less say in that. So I would put it here, even further along to the right, if that's correct.
Sounds good to me. What about support billing detail questions?
So this is where you have challenging the hours that they are paying for because they expected some level of quality. The demo got deployed. They really don't like how some of the screens look. It's really not in the spirit of the meetings for requirements with the designer that we provided. And this is where they will have, well, why did it take them, 80 hours to build something that's not quite what we asked for? We would like to only pay for 60 hours and for you to go and fix, these issues with the 20 hours that you're billing me for right now. So, however, the supporting billing details we could come back with and say, well, actually, they only worked 60 hours because you were torturing them in meetings for 20 hours. So they really didn't have that much time to do what you asked because you were too busy talking in meetings and didn't have your ducks in a row, and you were wasting the time of this highly skilled worker for UI for them to sit in a meeting and not do any design because you didn't know what you wanted. Those types of things. Or it could be reverse. It could be a consulting company that is truly not doing their job, and the challenge is that is accurate. They hired someone. They hired someone junior when they promised someone senior, which happens a lot, right? So this support billing details questions is about having information about exactly what that person did, so that you can say this is accurately reflected in the billing. So obviously. It is part of the time validation. You can see 1, 2, 3 sets, sets of, separation. I don't know if this is one of those things where you want to have, this additional needs connected this way as well, or is that implied through this other chain?
It can be implied, but in this case, as you have described it, the direct connection can actually add the clarity.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's fine. Yeah.
So if you had to think about supporting those billing details and questions, where would you position it on the evolution axis?
Good question. I really don't know because it's kind of standard, but it's kind of a manual process that really reflects how you run your business. It really means that, did you give the instructions to your consultants to do fine-grained time tracking, or did you just say put it in one bucket for UI work? That's, if you do the bucket, you're really betting that you're not going to need this feature as much with this client because they're rich or whatever. They're a bank. They're just happy to, as long as the budgets are repeated every year, they don't care and there's enough progress. Or you can have a startup where every minute counts. So it really depends on the nature of each deal. And so I have a tough time to put this because it's half the tooling that you're going to have, and half the time it's judgment of how you run the business. So that's a tough one. I don't know.
Do you have tooling that supports this, or are you using Excel and spreadsheets and other stuff? Do you have like a product that does this mostly, and then you answer some questions?
Well, I mean, in this case, we will have our product, which is the event model to the right. So we
don't have that.
will have that in there, but it's not going to be an Excel sheet. It's going to be in the actual product. So we know that for sure.
Where is it today? You do this as a daily business. Is there a product you use, or do you just kind of manually do it on the back?
You can say spreadsheets. Sure, you can say spreadsheets for.
I
mean, I'm using my business sparingly here and there because a lot of this stuff, you know, again, I already said that we have something that's quite different with by the slice billing. So what we're doing here is really reverse engineering a traditional business, and I'm using, you know, the traditional places I've worked at before as a consultant in, you know, some larger company that does outsourcing. So I'm using that experience to guide this. And in that case, they could have a spreadsheet. They could have, depending, maybe they have a mature accounting package that does invoicing, or they have some HR package that does time tracking. And they have to correlate what's in the time tracking to give a report. So in this case, I will say, you know, right now I'll be billing this. So let's not belabor that question with what I'm doing every day, because I'm not a good example.
So let's use the those bigger consulting companies that you worked with. What would it be for them?
No, I already said.
So is what?
Well, they usually have a time tracking system that they either did a, you know, if it's a smaller company, they did usually just ask for a templated Excel sheet. Some larger ones have their own website, which had, you know, add a row for each time bucket, and here are your statements of work or items that you can put time against.
So those all sound custom built to me.
Well, maybe it's different now. It's been a while since I did that.
You know, but they didn't. Yeah. So no, but I'm saying those. No, that's fine. We just got to go with what we know, right?
Yeah. So what do you think, Chris?
I think Rick's suggestion was spot on. If you have
custom.
Manual process which is based on Excel, it's definitely custom built.
Okay.
If you have a custom built system that does it, it still may be custom built. If all the organizations out there would use some sort of system or different systems, it would be probably in the product space. And if it would be a standardized approach supported by all the companies, it would be commodity utility. But I think we are very far from being standardized in this space yet. So it can be either product and custom build. Because Excel was mentioned, it's in the custom bit.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Now, do you ignore the messiness of it, or just keep going by what?
Ignore. Let's ignore it.
Ignore it. Okay. Okay. Because I see that do you go from top to bottom, because we still have this predict cash flow which we talked about, and then charge correct tax. Do you want to just get rid of this last charge correct?
Okay.
Tax?
Let's do it.
Just to or do you try to drive down as fast as possible?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
We can go with the charge correct tax.
Okay, so charging the correct tax is, I think, universal. I think this is this could be the furthest on the right, because it legally puts the company in jeopardy if you don't do it. So I'm going to make a stab at it and just say that in order to operate as a functioning entity, this needs to be quite far over here. And I don't think like death and taxes, right? It's inevitable.
So charging correct. So basically, whatever billing system you use just tells you what taxes you should charge.
Well, no, it's about the need. Again, regardless of the solution and the implementation of anything that you have, the company must charge the correct tax. It's
yeah, I get. Are you mapping what they desire it to be?
So I think, Rick, before you joined, we had a clarification from Chris on a couple of things.
Sure.
which was the fact that you have to look at the Wardley map regardless of the implementation of the system. You have to look at every single capability and concern that you have, from whether it is in someone's mind that they have to make a decision about something, and you know, whatever it is, it gets put on the Wardley map. It doesn't, you know, it's not like we're dissecting just the solution and the integrations with that solution here that we're going to program. There's certainly a lot of components. The majority of the components will be in that, but you have to add anything that's, you know, it's kind of like what we put in as auxiliary events to show what's happening, such as store, you know, customer entered store on our timeline to show context. Same thing here. We're doing is we're saying that there is a charge the correct tax, and that doesn't matter if it's something that automates through an API to my bank to do that remittance, or if I read it from a spreadsheet and sign in manually and do that remittance, or if I mail a check to the government. Doesn't matter. The correct charging the correct tax and paying the correct tax is universal. It must be done, or I don't have a business.
Right. I get the need is universal. What I think, moving to the left to right, my understanding is doing this, is the ability to do this a commodity. Like, basically, if it's commodity, my system's calculating that for me and it just comes out, right? Versus, actually, I have to still do some spreadsheet stuff. It's a need, and I totally do it. And I have pretty standard spreadsheets, but they're all custom to my business.
So if I may, I understand your concern and probably confusion, because it's very common in this space. You've very well noticed that the need is out there, and the need is in the commodity space, because everyone has to charge a correct tax. That's for sure. Implementations may be different. You may be going through all the law by yourself and trying to figure out what tax should you pay, or you may have consultants, or you may have system which is in the commodity utility space. So implementations may be different, and now it's up to the person who draws the map to choose what is important in the map, right? If your system is going to support charging correct tax, then maybe we should focus on existing solutions rather than the need, and put the charge correct tax more in the custom build or in the product space, right? Because that will show the room for future improvement.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just where it is, and these businesses, for them today, it's pretty much, if they're using a billing system, the correct tax comes out of it, right?
Yep.
So that makes it commodity. It's not whether how strong their need is. Their need, that's a different. Sliding left and right is whether doing this is a commodity, no matter how important it is. That's a different. How important it is a different thing than what we're sliding right now. It's
no, we don't care how important it is right now.
Yeah, we're just comparing how common it is, how, like, it's commodity. It just gets done. I don't know. It's just like whatever system I use, it gets done. Doesn't matter the system. Then that's a commodity. It's like I have to customize my system to make sure it gets done correctly. Then it's over here. So I just wanted to clear that's what we're trying to slide left and right.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So right now, let's jump to the other end of the map and let's look at the client management.
Okay. Yeah, this one was, I wasn't too comfortable with where we left off with this, because we started to talk about these different managers. It kind of went quite in a different, this is Chris's interpretation of how he, the other Chris that was here last week, of how he managed to do this. And what, again, just to review, his focus was really on whether separating these dots with the needs actually paints a good abstraction layer, so that it enables the left and right movement in your solution. And that's also reflected in the event model, so that you can see exactly how that integration happens and what those abstractions are, so that you can have that mobility from left to right. And that's why he chose these words, to make sure that that was the reality for his trading system, so that he could have this left and right mobility. If he chose different words and different points, it would have too many common concepts, and the separation of them would make it really difficult. It would have this high inertia of trying to move, too much, a bad organization of things. So you'd have too large a chunk to move, and maybe some of those things were really, not really standard yet in the industry. And so trying to make it a commodity with too many things involved would be tough. So this was his idea of how you come up with the terms of calling this. But, I'd like to hear your input on this as to whether these are, good or bad abstractions for this purpose, for this application anyway, for this business.
It looks okay for me. I understand it. I can imagine a system built around it. I think it reflects how organizations work. Probably there are some other systems which are missing from the map or subsystems, but we will discover them sooner or later, or you will discover them when you will be building the real system. But I mean, this map is really, really good. So if you look at the client management, where would you put it?
Well, in terms of my plan for now, it would be custom build, but probably with a lot of potential to, productize it or even make it a commodity. So I'm going to start to play with this arrow here because I don't know if I'm going to put it. I still really don't know where I'm going to put it, and then I don't know if it's going to be something that we want to make pluggable with a commodity, or if that's even in the works. So
that's an excellent question, and you've mentioned an external system, which is awesome observation, because this is what Wardley Map will show you. Client management practices right now, I would consider them in the commodity utility space.
Right.
Because you have Salesforce, you have plenty of those customer relationship management tools, and they are out there. And I trust it will be much cheaper to buy any software as a service solution with a reasonable pricing model in the commodity utility space and just do the integration.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so we will have an integration piece with a commodity. So we can just say this is a better strategy because I don't want to build all that stuff. I can just do that. Oh.
Yes, and because it's those systems are usually in the pay-per-use pricing model, they are very attractive to buyers because they don't freeze, because buyers don't have to freeze capital in advance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if we do have, with some of the other things that we're going to be doing, is there ever a chance that you want to move something like client management back because you're going to offer extra functionality in that is not a commodity?
Yes, there is a chance. But
in the Wardley maps, I only see left to right. I don't see the opposite.
So I can elaborate on this. So what will happen is either client management is not in the commodity utility space, but in the product. And in the product space, you have this feature by feature competition, right? Or it may be very close to commodity utility.
Yeah, we'll put it over here.
Or you have there where you are actually offering a customer or a client management system, but with a side system attached to it, which could be a separate custom built component.
Right.
And because
you augment the functionality.
You augment the functionality. Or there is the third option, which is the most interesting. You are using marketing to convince your customers to pay you more for custom built stuff.